I think we're going to talk about building the moral alignment space. What is it, moral alignment? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities and interventions? And I want to start by this quote from the Bible. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the young goat, the calf, and the lion will graze together, and a little child will lead them. This is from Isaiah 11:6. And I think it speaks to the longing of humanity to see a very transformational change in the world, to see something which is totally different than it is now. Like the order of nature is reversed, right? The lion and the goat are playing together, and a child is leading. We're not in a world today where children can lead anything, right? But I think it speaks something to the childlike ambitions that we have, to see a really good world for everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. And this relates to AI for me, because AI is the promise to actualize that. It also holds the risks to kill everybody, but it also holds the promise to actualize something like that. A really true good world. And I want to talk about something which I call the alignment absurd, which is when you think about the AI safety space today and the whole space working on AI capabilities but also AI safety, what they're saying actually is, look, we can reach heaven. We can build heaven here on earth, but we gotta have AI do exactly what humans want it to do. If we'll have alignment between, I call it HI, human intelligence, and artificial intelligence, AI, HI and AI are aligned, it's gonna be perfect, it's gonna be heaven. And here I say, I have this face, when I hear this, I say, I don't know. I mean, looking at the human history, we kind of did bad stuff. And when we talk about the risk, we're thinking about X risk and S risks. X being existential, the risks of killing everybody, and S risks creating a lot of suffering. Now, what is X risk in the world? Humanity has killed most wild animals during the last 55 years. Most wild animals are dead just in a few decades. S risks, could you think about a more effective way to reproduce suffering all over Earth than effective farming? So when I hear only alignment, that's what we need and everything's gonna be perfect, I'm like, I'm sorry. It's just not gonna happen. We gotta have AI alignment, I think. We gotta have AI doing what humans want it to do, but we also gotta raise the question, what do we want? Not only how do we control AI, not only controllability and what is called corrigibility, which means also we can change what AI wants. Let's say today we want something, and tomorrow we realize we have a better goal for AI. But also, we gotta align AI with morality. So AI alignment just means, or technical alignment, means that AI does what humans want it to do, and moral alignment means that AI is acting according to morality, to ethics, to the values that we truly think are the best. And what I'm trying to promote is sentientism, which Jamie Woodhouse, sitting here, has a podcast on and has popularized this term of sentientism, which means caring for all sentients. So that's the alignment absurd. By the way, if you don't understand something or you want to say something during the lecture, feel free. We're a small number of people, just say anything, you don't need to raise your hand. So more alignment we talked about, and I think this space demands a new terminology. How do we speak about those things? How do we think about those things? And the thing that was most striking to me is for a long time, like for several months, I tried to understand how do you call this problem of value selection? Like you have, okay, we're controlling the AI, how do we do that? That's one problem. The second problem is, how do you call the problem of which values do we choose? We want to control it to what? Paul Cristiano called it in one essay the steering problem. Let's say you control the car, where do you drive it to? And there isn't a term for that. So we're trying to create the right terms to speak about those subjects, and one of them is value selection. Another one is the power ethics gap. So if you think about the history of the world, you see an increase in intelligence of creatures and power of creatures, and you see a big increase in their power. And today the world has never been so concentrated and so manipulated by one species, which is humankind. So you have a lot of concentration of power, scaling intelligence, more calculations are being done over the planet, but not scaling compassion and in ethics. So this is called the power ethics gap. Power is very strong, of course it's very heavy, so it's down. Ethics is not so progressed. And the bigger this gap is, the more dangerous it is. If you're interested in that, there is an interesting course called AI for Buddhism. It's an online course which I took. And he doesn't call it the power ethics gap, but he talks about those concepts, I think in a very interesting way. And it got me to think about this concept and write about it, the power ethics gap. With superintelligence, this gap can increase very significantly because AI can make humans much more powerful, and in itself it can be a very powerful creature, but not necessarily a very ethical one. And the more the gap it is, the bigger the chance of atrocities, of true atrocities. And this is from the Monastic Academy, which runs this course I told you about, AI for Buddhism. Intelligence has scaled exponentially. Wisdom and compassion have not. And wisdom is to act according to a real understanding of the world with understanding of the right morality. This is wisdom. And I think that humans have made a mistake when we call ourselves Homo sapiens, which means the wise man. I think we're the smart men. We're a very smart species. We're able to manipulate the world very well. It doesn't mean that we act with wisdom, which also means with morality. So I talked about AI value selection as another important term. And I think, how do we call the end goal of what we want? Let's say we will reach an AGI or an ASI which is aligned with morality, which is good, which is benevolent. How do we call it? Is it a benevolent AI, a sentient-kind AI, an AI which is for all sentientity, like humanity, sentientity, which includes possible future digital minds and animals and humans? You can also call it being kind, from the word being, all of the beings together. So I think we need new terms, we need new ways to think about those questions, to create spaces in people's minds for moral alignment and for all the different questions that arise out of this space. I generally tend to see AI for sentient kind as divided into 5 subspaces. The first one is AI tool usage. How do you use tools as advocates for digital minds or for animals or for humans? And you can enhance your work by using AI tools. The second is tool creation. For example, OpenPause is an organization that is creating an AI assistant which is trained on the data of the animal rights movement. So this is tool creation. The third one is promoting good applications and fighting or restricting bad ones. Good AI applications, I mean something like decoding animal language. So it's not about activists, it's doing something in society, in the world, which can help animals, like us understanding what they're saying and being able to communicate and talk with them. By the way, not just saying, but also communicating. Animals have a diverse way of communication. It's a lot about emotion in space and not only about sounds. And bad applications, it could be something like precision livestock farming, which could, in some scenarios, be very, very dangerous. The fourth one, this is what I'm working on, is the moral alignment, which means influencing the values of AI, and AGI and ASI to be the best that we can. And the fifth one is AGI creation, so you can think about us as a movement also building, and ASI, which is compassionate, and if anyone has like $500 billion to spend, let me know and let's do it. But that's, of course, not currently in our radar. But I divided it also to think about those subspaces in terms of scale, neglectedness, and tractability. I think very generally speaking, the scale of potential influence increases when you go from up to down, but tractability goes down. So AI tool usage, it's very tractable, meaning that if you do some intervention here on one, I think the probability that you will succeed and you will be able to do something that you can measure and know is quite high, but your influence will not be as big as number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. But if you do number 4, for example, I think it's much less uncertain, tractability is much lower, but the scale, the influence can be much higher. So that's just one like framework to think about this whole space, which moral alignment is part of. And you can also divide moral alignment into subspaces, for example, ethical grounding and vision, benefits to humans, which I think is very important. We need a lot of research to show that actually it's for humans to make AI sentient-centric. And what does it mean to have a sentient-centric AI? That's another important question we talk about just a little bit. Because if AI is speciesist, for example, who's to say an AI creates AGI, creates ASI, who's to say that humans, when they are so down the scale of intelligence, are not going to be labeled as another species who is unintelligent and needs to be destroyed or hurt or harmed? Who's to say that? Whereas if AI is sentient-centric, it's a much more robust morality and could keep us humans safe in different scenarios as the future unfolds. So benefits to humanity, targeted advocacy in front of AI companies, in front of regulators, in front of influencers in the AI space, technical work and public technical work, meaning I'll give you one example. There is a startup called Camel, Compassion in Machine Learning, which is curating data sets to be put into the AI to make the AI more compassionate. And you can also test that, talking to the AI. Currently, it's models like Claude or ChatGPT, and seeing how it responds to different situations. And of course, the values that AI holds are connected to the data set that you feed into the AI. So curating and changing these data sets, it's one potential way to do that. So it's also technical work and public engagement. I think at the end, if the public is not engaged and doesn't care about this, there's a limit, there's a ceiling into how much AI companies can work on this, can spend money on this, can change their ways into moral alignment. So now I'm going to touch very briefly on our theory of change. I don't think you see it. No, the resolution is not high enough for you to see. But the Moral Alignment Center, this is our theory of change. We're doing the field building for different initiatives that will do 5 things which will create more compassionate models. Okay, what are those 5 things? First is, and again, it's not necessarily that we do that directly, it just means that we need to create the field and the space to do that, to convince AI leaders in those companies to create more compassionate models, first because they care, just because they care. And the AI leaders are much more animal-friendly, sentient-friendly than the general public, and even the like average person in San Francisco. For example, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, is an ideological vegetarian who wants to close down slaughterhouses. So the people there are not the medium regular people you see on the streets. They're much, much more friendly to this cause. Much more. That's one thing. The second thing, that he will want to do it just for PR reasons, just because of pressure. We know that companies, for example, are going catering, for example. They're not doing it because they care about the animals so much. They're doing it because they understand that there is public pressure and they will improve their branding or their sales or whatever if they go catering. The third thing is they understand that it's good to create a sentient-centric AI for humanity. And we talked about that just a little bit, but we need much more research on this specific question. The fourth thing is we create the technical solutions how to create a sentient-centric AI. For example, like I told you, curating data sets, but there are other different frameworks into how do you instill values into AI. And the fifth thing is working in front of regulators, because now the whole field is not very much regulated, especially because, the US and China are leading the race, and Trump is not so much for regulation in AI, he's just for acceleration, and he canceled some regulation laws that Biden put into place. But I think later on that might change. I don't think governments are going to let companies control the world, and if AI is going to be so powerful, those companies are going to have crazy, crazy power, and I think governments will step in maybe in 4 years, maybe even sooner than that. So we got to have a movement to influence those regulators and the politicians. So that's very generally the theory of change. So let me just give you very briefly 7 examples of interventions. The first one is research. I think there are a lot of very neglected, crucial research questions. For example, look, this is an AI, and he's pondering about the question to feel or not to feel. That is the question. Should we create an AI who is sentient? Will a sentient AI morality be much more robust than an insentient AI's morality? You can look at it in this slide. Who would you trust? A sentient AI? We're talking about superintelligence here, or an AGI, not the models you know now. A sentient AI or a philosophical zombie? It's a very important question, and there's hardly any. I didn't find any research actually on that, and I wrote a piece about it in the AI forum. So let me just give you very briefly 7 examples of interventions. The first one is research. I think there are a lot of very neglected, crucial research questions. For example, look, this is an AI, and he's pondering about the question to feel or not to feel. That is the question. Should we create an AI who is sentient? Will a sentient AI morality be much more robust than an insentient AI's morality? You can look at it in this slide. Who would you trust? A sentient AI? We're talking about superintelligence here, or an AGI, not the models you know now. A sentient AI or a philosophical zombie? It's a very important question, and there's hardly any. I didn't find any research actually on that. And I wrote a piece about it in the AI forum. I'm very worried about creating a superintelligence which is not sentient. I'm also worried about creating a superintelligence which is sentient, because it means it can suffer, and this suffering can be multiplied. But if it's not sentient, think just about the fact that basically it doesn't understand reality at all. Because reality is what's happening now. Everybody now looking at me have some subjective experience in this moment. That's reality. An AI which is not sentient has no connection with this reality, of the reality of this world. That's, I think, very, very worrying. Other research questions: how to create a sentient kind AI which improves AI safety and is good for humans. I think it's a crucial question. Think about our society. It is based on a lot of contradictions and conflict of interest between animals and humans. So just saying an AI that cares about everybody is not a good answer. We need a much more detailed and nuanced answer for that, and we need a vision for an AI that works with humanity, that is good for humanity, that uplifts humanity and creates flourishing of everybody. So that's, I think, important philosophical work, and a lot of technical research, which we also talked about. Second example of an intervention. So the first one was research. The second one is what I talked to you about a little bit, Buddhism for AI. I think it's an interesting intervention. There is a monastery in the States that is called Maple. Maple is the monastic academy for the preservation of life on Earth. I remember that. Oh, nice. So that is, and their vision is to create a superintelligence that walks the path of Buddha, that is enlightened. I'm bringing you like also an exotic and like I think mind-intriguing interventions. Create a new language. Okay, let's skip this one. It's a bit more difficult to explain. Have evals. So AI for Animals had a very good, I think, project to create some kind of benchmark and evaluations to test models for their caring and friendliness to animals. Every time a new model pops up on the market, right, they always say, oh, it reached this benchmark and that benchmark, and it's so good at math and at programming. I care more about how about its performance on morality than I do if it solves harder math problems or harder coding problems. But you don't see any benchmarks like that, hardly. So I think that's very important work. Benchmarks on general sentient-centric values, or caring about digital minds, caring about animals, caring about humans. Creating a pledge in the AI space, people working on AI, which says that they will work to make AI a positive force for all sentient beings. Currently, if you go to all the websites of the leading companies, Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, they say they are for humanity. In the website, they don't mention anything else. That's, I think, a thinking that shows that we haven't transformed our minds into the AI area and age. You know, with power comes responsibility. If we're gonna create a God, we cannot keep being like, oh, I care only about humans, but I'm creating a God. Like, it's just crazy. We gotta have a transformation of mind. Advocacy and lobby. So this is a picture from the LinkedIn of Jeff Sebo, which is here. By the way, I didn't ask him before I took this picture. Should you ask him? I don't know, it's too late, but I'm just raising it up. So this is Jeff Seboy, this is Robert Long, and they did some work in front of AI companies, OpenAI and Google and Anthropic, on digital minds and things that AI companies today can change. And they also did some changes because of their work to be more prepared for the day where digital minds have sentience and we can make them suffer or we can care about them and improve their lives. And storytelling, I think is very important. We need a new story for our species. And not the story of, okay, we're here, humanism, we're trying to make our lives as pleasurable as possible, but the story of stewardship, the story of caring for all beings, everybody who is there is like to be here. And there is a very big urgency because AI is running faster. I asked ChatGPT to make the AI run faster, but you see the models are not so progressive yet. But next year, you know that you will be able to see the AI running much faster. You know that in a month even. The next lecture is gonna be much better this slide. So we don't have a lot of time to understand how do we instill this heart into here, right? Once the AI is further here, it could be too late. We have ability to change now, to create change right here, right now. What will happen in 10 years? To be honest, I'm not sure. Like, for example, now, part of what I do, I create content in the EA forum on social media about moral alignment. I think it's important to create the terms, to create the understanding. What will be in 10 years when AI will be able to create all of that much better than me and many other different stuff. It's hard for me to imagine that. We could be in a world in 10 years that we still have, or 20 years, a lot of influence. But we don't know that for sure. We know for sure we can influence now. So it's very urgent. And there are a lot of actors in this space, but I'm not going to go, not a lot, I'm sorry. There are only a few actors in this space, but they are very important. And I'm going to go over that very briefly so we can also have questions. But LDS AI is working on AI welfare, AI for Animals, of course, which organized this conference, Open Pause, which is doing the, what I told you, the AI, which is your advocate friend, compassionate machine learning, we talked about electric sheep and others, and actors working on humans. Moral alignment is for everybody, of course humans are included, so Algorithmic Justice League, Responsible AI, and so forth. And we have also actors that are working, that work pertaining to all of these groups, right, which is very much in the moral alignment scope and philosophy, like the Center for Mind, Ethics and Policy, and some others. And you also have entrepreneurship opportunities like Kickstarting for Good, Rethink Priorities, AIM, and others. So we need to have a clear vision for this movement. The movement to bring about moral alignment, to have AI aligned with ethics, and not only with what humans currently want, telling themselves a very, I think, narrow story. And the challenges are very, very big. This picture represents, the monkey represents evolution, this represents a human, this represents an AI, and this represents an ASI, artificial superintelligence. So think that we need, like theoretically, to align humans with the right morality, and they need to align AGI with the right morality, and AGI, which will create ASI, needs to align ASI with the right morality. It's not so easy, and there is a monkey here also because evolution didn't optimize us for morality. We know that it optimizes us as humans for something else. So maybe we need to optimize evolution as well. That's a different story. So there are a lot of challenges here, and we need to retell our story as a species. So now I want to open it up for a discussion, asking you different questions. So I'm happy for you to talk about anything that you want that arises from what I talked about in the moral alignment space, but also about different statements that I will go over now. Moral alignment is, I thought, instead of like asking questions, just having statements, a little bit provocative, some of them, I don't know, and just having your opinions on them. So the first one is moral alignment is the most important goal of our generation. The second one is we need a small professional movement. By the way, I don't think, I think this is true, but this I don't think that, but I'm just saying that for you to think about it. Some people do think that we need a small professional movement, not a big grassroots one. The less the merrier. This movement needs to be part of AI safety, not EA, not like effective altruism, not animal rights. Its identity is AI safety. I tend to agree with it. I think it's fundamentally an AI safety issue. And how do we establish the moral alignment space, MA's moral alignment, as a legitimate space? Okay, so let's have questions and thoughts.
This is a tough enough challenge, right? And even that probably isn't enough, because the moral alignment is really setting the starting point for maybe an AGI and then ongoing creation of ASI. So even that is tough enough, it's setting the starting point. Assuming we get this right and we set that starting point well, but then we are, as humans, no longer in control, and the AGI and the ASI go on to develop their own worldviews and ethical standards. How do you think that might develop? Is there a correlation between intelligence and power and good ethics? Are they orthogonal? Will the lack of a biological basis mean that they have better or worse morality? Right, they won't have the cognitive dissonance and the self-rationalization and the social norm constraints, but also they won't have maybe the biological basis that drives compassion. How do you think they might develop once they're free of us?
So I think first there is the scenario that humanity is able to get the AI alignment solved, and then ASI is created, but we still control it. It's possible. I mean, people are working on it. For me, it's a bit hard to see how someone not intelligent can control someone which is so much more intelligent than what we are. It's kind of like thinking that a cow will control you, like it cornered you into somewhere, and then it can keep controlling you, containing you. I don't think that's very possible, but people are thinking about ways to do it, and there are some, I think, promising directions. So if that happens, ASI can keep developing and can keep understanding morality maybe better than us, but still will remain in control. I think even if we're not in control and we have some coexistence even with these super intelligences, that's a very good question. And I think intelligence is not so much correlated directly with morality, but understanding reality is, and those are not the same thing. So I think there are two things that are important to separate. The first one is intelligence in terms of making right predictions and using a variety of tools to manipulate the world. You think about it, you can be very intelligent, you can manipulate the world, whatever you like, you can control the world and still have no understanding about reality whatsoever. If ASI is not sentient, maybe that's the situation. If it doesn't have any understanding, if you never experience anything, how can you understand that the world is actually just experiences? He won't be able to understand that at all, though he can manipulate the world in a very good way. So having high intelligence and understanding reality is not the same thing. I think if ASI will understand reality deep, that means that there is the potential for it to be more moral. Not necessarily, of course, but I think it is part of the framework that will enable morality. I think that there are, mainly when I think about it, I think about three main things which will determine the actions of AI. First is the capabilities. By the way, AI can be as smart as possible and as moral as possible. If it doesn't have any capabilities, for example, it's in a box and it cannot get out, and speak to anyone, so it doesn't have any influence on the world. So the first is capabilities. The second is its understanding of what is reality. And the third is understanding of what is morality. What's the right morality? Those three things can determine how the AI will behave.
Do you have any, since your org is sort of a meta kind of policy and advocacy thing, do you have any views on either Shevlin and the three people that Winnie, the last name, the three people that called
Winnie Street.
Or Winnie Street, yeah, their panel or Nick Bostrom's panel, because they were kind of touching on like the big open question here, or one of the big open questions, which is like, what is this morality thing that we're talking about? What is this right thing? And they both touched on that. Do you have any views on what they said? Agree, disagree?
Yeah, you said Nick Bostrom, right?
Either Bostrom or
Bostrom, the cosmic
Shevlin and Street.
Yes, I think that, I agree with Bostrom in the sense that we should have some humility that maybe we don't understand morality and we never will understand morality as good as some cosmic host or someone who's more intelligent. I think one of the ways to judge it is really seeing how this other being understands reality. if they don't understand reality, you should be very skeptical about it. Like I have this saying which says, never trust someone who doesn't exist. You know? So if he doesn't have experiences, for me, it doesn't exist. So I don't trust him. So that's one thing. But it's only one thing. The other thing is if you have, let's say if you have an ASI which is much more intelligent, it can be much more consistent and not have all of our biases. And I think it also speaks to subjective experiences. And I explain this. I think subjective experiences work for morality and against morality. They work for morality because I think everybody here in the room got to have their own ethical views because they experienced suffering and pleasure, and they understood that one is bad and one is good. Without that, we wouldn't be here. The other thing is subjective experiences creates bias and twists and our morality into being something which is not so accurate and coherent. For example, if you love someone and that someone does something, you cannot help but thinking that maybe they did the right thing, although it was wrong. And we all don't know this for ourselves as well, right? We get very attached to our ideas, to our desires, to what we invested time in, and there are all these fallacies. These fallacies come from subjective experiences of attachment, of holding, of good feelings about something or bad feelings about something. For example, if I have an organization and and there is the rationale to close it tomorrow, I know I'm going to feel bad because I invested so much in this organization. That means subjective experiences work also against morality. And I wonder if in another being they could be the optimal combination of, on the one hand, it has subjective experiences to understand intrinsic ethics. On the other hand, those subjective experiences are not diverging him or her. I don't know how to call it. I call it sometimes, but it means it doesn't exist. So I rather, if you think about an ASI, it could well be sentient. So he doesn't have those experiences who are just spinning him out of the more rational, coherent course. If that answers your question somehow. Yeah.
I have thought about moral alignment, and in my mind there are three possible scenarios, and I'd like to know whether there are more or maybe
Sure.
whether I'm overlooking something. So one is aligning AI to some object level values, and that's, I think, the most plausible, the most probable, and in my mind it results in value lock-in of some kind. The other one is having some moral progress of AI, or assuming it's correctable, or maybe it's written into the AI to have some moral progress. And the worry here is that, well, how do we know there's anything special about our values that would lead to the AI achieving those values in the end? And the third one, which I think is the least probable, because to my understanding only 5 people or 4 people work on it, is coherence extrapolated volition.
Yeah.
What other scenarios am I overlooking, and what do you think?
It's a fascinating question. Did everybody hear the question, or do you want me to repeat it? Yeah. There are 2 different questions. One question is the simpler question, of what are the value selection? What values do we pick for the AI? The other question is, what is the framework of selecting values, of changing values, of working? And one of the concepts within this thinking about frameworks is the coherent extrapolated volition of Eliezer Yudkowsky. By the way, Yudkowsky is an interesting example of someone very, very smart, very capable, but from my humble opinion, doesn't understand reality at all, because Yudkowsky thinks that only humans are sentient, or only maybe humans and some monkeys or something like that. So for him, a pig and a dog are not sentient. So he has a very different understanding than me. I'm not saying I'm correct and he's wrong. I mean, that's what I think, but of course he thinks otherwise. But anyway, so he made this term of coherent extrapolated volition, which just means let's take human values as they are now and have AI think what would happen if we didn't have all these biases, and we have all the time in the world to think about AI, and we were more rational, and we have all the time to research and explore. What values will we come up with in, let's say, 1,000 years? So that's a framework to work on AI, and there are different frameworks. For example, the constitutional AI of Anthropic is just, let's say you have a paper and you have AI working on that paper, and you said rightly so, that's dangerous because these are our values now. In 50 years we'll have other values. how do AI adapt and update those values? And here, by the way, if we talked about coherent extrapolated evaluation, so Adria just came in and he wrote a piece about sentientist coherent extrapolated evaluation, which I urge you to read because it's very interesting. 2 minutes, yeah. I think it's a very tough question. We need a lot of work, technical and philosophical, to map a lot of different frameworks to work on of how values will be developed. I agree with you that we shouldn't try to lock it in something specific, but it should be something that is developing and perhaps changing over time. Yeah, it's a very, we need to think about different scenarios and different frameworks into how to develop that. And there was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot. I will reach out to you later.
Just a super quick point.
Sure.
My understanding is that Yudkowsky disavowed CEV in the Dorkish podcast, like amongst the 4 hours somewhere in there. I thought he said even like a year. Yeah, I wasn't quite clear on that. So, what do you think?
Yeah, did he?
So, yeah, like I think that he thinks that right now in the current trajectory, at least in the near term, we won't do it, and
it's a tactical thing.
It's not like what we should aim for, but still, ideally, it is what we should point towards, and in the future we can.
Okay. Yeah, he made this gnomic pronouncement, and it's hard to understand.
And just to finish on the point that I want to tell you, there are also other ways that people think about, like frameworks, how AI will, or techniques, methods, how AI would learn values. For example, one of them is just watching human language. So don't have a list of values, which could also bring into problems with inner alignment, with outer alignment, like the paperclip Bostrom thought experiment. Just watch human behavior and learn from that. I think that's actually very dangerous because human values are much better than their deeds, much better. And there is even a concept in psychology called the value-action gap, if I'm not mistaken, the action value gap, especially about that. So if we come from a sentientist perspective, we should be very careful about the exact framework or techniques that we choose. And these are my contact details. Feel free to reach out to me for anything. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ronen.